Okay, it looks like we are live. And this chat today is going to be, as the other ones have, about the book Spooky Houses, if I can get it on there right. And I'm here with Del Merritt, who has the story in there called The Closed Room. Hey, Del.
Hi,
Say
Gary.
hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
And why don't you talk to us about the story without giving too much away, kind of where you got the idea and what goes on in the story, that kind of thing.
The story of the closed room actually comes from personal, not experience, but situation, I guess you could say. We live in a really old house, and it's built very strangely. And the room described in this story actually exists in my bedroom.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and despite the fact that I don't believe that there's anything supernatural involved or anything like that, it's just a creepy, weird little place. So that's where I keep my library, and a lot of strange things. And it's just one of those places that stirs your imagination. Even the door is weird looking. It's like slats of wood rather than like a solid door, and it's crooked. The room itself, actually, before we even bought the house, was sort of on an uneven keel, and so the door itself is cut crooked to fit into the wall that is now kind of crumbling. Um, and it really, I think for me, the most of the time when I'm coming up with stories, it's things like this that do it. I'll see something strange or something that it's just a little out of the ordinary, and it'll just put an idea in my head, and then I just work it from there, really. No special details or anything beyond that.
Well, no, a creepy room is a great way to start a story, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, look, you got a whole book about creepy houses, and it's the same thing,
Exactly.
on a smaller scale. Yeah. If you
Exactly.
I think when we had first talked, you did send an email to me years and years ago for a project you were working on called The Strange Sound of Cthulhu, and
Actually, let me just show
that's
everybody that. There you go.
the right one. Um, and the questions you had asked me, um, I remember responding something to the effect of like, you know, every time you walk past an old house or a strange looking house or something, or a strange looking patch of woods, anything like that, for me, it definitely stirs something in me that makes me think about what could that be? What would be creepy about that, or what would be fun about that? Excuse me. Um, so you know, again, that's where the beginning of a lot of my stories comes from. It's just seeing something strange or something out of the ordinary, um, and and then running with it. Really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where a lot of good stories start. You see something in real life, and it sort of clicks somewhere inside the back of your mind, and your imagination starts to run, and you come
Yeah.
up with something. Um, I mean, I think the other angle of it is sometimes you just have an idea. I'd like to talk about this, but I don't want to directly talk about that. And so you come up with a story from that. But a lot of times it's just seeing something that triggers something. You know, my book, The Homestead, which is a novella, which is about a spooky house again, also, all came about because I passed an old farmhouse because we live out in the country, and I started thinking about how all these families that had probably grown up in that house and all this. And then I started twisting it around to be sort of dark and have a dark side to it. And so those are the kind of things that you just sort of, something will hit you and it just clicks somehow.
Yeah, and then it's up to the artist to do what they're going to do with it. Whether it's a sound, a passage of notes that a musician will use, or certain colors that a painter might see in combination, and it just sparks something. And for writers, it's really just your imagination taking over after that.
Exactly.
There's just so
Um,
much to draw from.
yeah. So talking about the music and about Strange Sound of Cthulhu, that was how we first connected up way back, probably 2005, maybe, because that was when I was working on the book. Maybe even before that, I think it was 2 or 3 years I worked on that. And that was all about you as a musician because you had done some Lovecraftian music. So let's talk about your music. Why don't you get the the viewers into some of that?
At the time, for the interview for Strange Sound of Cthulhu, I was in our, I want to say, third band that played traditional music from the British Isles, Irish, Scottish, English stuff, which has been kind of a lifelong passion. Despite being a rock musician most of my life, it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. It's just what I did. But putting those three bands together were the first time I really ever said I want to do this thing and form something like that. So that's what the band at the time was playing. It was called Brown Jenkin, and we everybody in the band, it was me, my wife, and my brother. We were all very interested in history and folklore and horror movies and horror stories and stuff like that. So, needless to say, for those who are familiar with H.P. Lovecraft, the name Brown Jenkin actually comes from one of his stories, and he actually wrote a song for one of his stories, and there was never any music put to it, and it was a perfect 18th century song, and I decided I was going to actually put music to it and start using it. And so Brown Jenkin played that song, which is, we call it Fill Up Your Glass because that's where the chorus basically naturally leads to that line, Fill Up Your Glass. It's a drinking song. And so, yeah, Brown Jenkin played that for years. And then our other group that was sort of an offshoot from that, that my wife and I started, is called the Sea Dogs. And we do primarily sea music and sea shanties. But we throw in a couple songs here and there from that normal landsmen would have listened to or played. And as towards the end of our sets, we started putting that song "Fill Up Your Glass" in because we were playing for reenactors a lot of time, and it just seemed to fit in perfectly. They were most of them were familiar with Lovecraft, and you give them anything to swing a mug to, and they're happy. So we started throwing that in there, and the original band Brown Jenkin actually is semi-defunct because my brothers moved a little further away, so we don't really see each other that often. But the Sea Dogs continue on, and there was also a song mentioned in the book that I had done specifically for the Sea Dogs. I had taken the story of The Shadow over Innsmouth by H.P. Lovecraft and turned it into a sea shanty. And we played it a couple times. I was never really all that happy with it. It seemed good on paper, but every once in a while you'll be playing a song and you realize that it just doesn't sound as good as you think it should, and then it just mysteriously disappears from your set list. Um, I do that a lot with our stuff. I'll come up with an idea, I'll be like, "Hey, let's play this song. We'll do it." And I just don't like the way that we do it, so I'm like, "Yeah, we're not doing that anymore." But yeah, so the Sea Dogs are a fairly interesting group, even if you don't necessarily like that style of music or think that we're not very good at it, because we're pretty unique. Not only are we a band and we do these sea shanties and songs of the sea, which we started doing back in, I want to say 2004 was when that band was uh, created. Um, but in addition, we also do living history. So at any of our shows, you could either see us just singing, or you might see us actually like shooting at people with flintlock pistols and stuff like that, or displaying weapons and uh, different items that people might use on board a ship. So we kind of cover both angles. And when it comes to performing at different events, it gets us in a lot of trouble because, okay, they want to put us on stage so we can sing, but I've got a tent full of valuable, replica stuff like swords and pistols and stuff that I need somebody to be with at all times. So they'll be like, all right, well, you can't go on stage, so we'll put you with the reenactment groups, and then you'll sing there. So we constantly run into trouble with that. But that's the price you pay for being the most dangerous band on land or sea. Is if you're carrying around all that stuff, you don't want to just leave it behind when you go on stage. So that's pretty much what's going on musically for us. We're still playing. We just did a gig at Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. I don't know if you ever get a chance to get out east of any. But if you do get to Philadelphia for any reason, there's plenty of nice things to see. I would recommend checking out Fort Mifflin. It's a really cool little place, and if you're into the ghost hunting thing, a lot of people believe it's got a lot of ghosts and stuff. So there's constantly ghost tours and people staying over to try to videotape ghosts or whatever. So that's a lot of fun. And then we got September is full every weekend. We got something, and then October we're gearing up towards doing a Halloween show at old tavern in a place called Haddonfield in New Jersey. That's where John Carpenter, or Deborah Hill rather, from Halloween got the name Haddonfield because that was where she came from. At least that's what I heard. Anyway.
That's what I do.
Yeah. So we're actually the Sea Dogs will be performing there, but we're going to be throwing in a lot of sort of ghost ballads and things like that you get from the British Isles, the creepy old songs that little kids don't really like hearing.
So, do you have a website or something people can check out for the band?
We do. It's seadogsnj.com. It's very, very easy to do. SEA dogs, DOGS, NJ for New Jersey.com.
Perfect. So anything else you want to add about that?
Not really.
Okay. Well, let's talk about. We did another. You were featured in another one of my compilation books, Lovecraftian Branches, which that book has a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's old stories, and then it has some new stories from several of us that are all based on Lovecraft's mythos, including Willem Pugmire, who, after he sent me the story that he sent me, he passed away. And so a percentage of the sales of that book are going to his estate, because I wanted to do that as a tribute to him. And I knew he had a lot of bills because he had a lot of hospital bills at the time. And I thought it would sort of help to try to take care of some of that. So that's in there. But you have a story in there as well. And why don't you talk to us about that story?
I think that story, which is called The Hillside Altar,
Yes.
is a little more typical of the kind of stuff that I write. I write several different styles of things. The one that I did or the one that I submitted for Spooky Houses was a general run-of-the-mill sort of horror story. And when I do those kind of stories, I try not to get too controversial, let's say. Because the majority of my stuff, the stuff that I normally write, is actually pretty. It would be rated R at least if it was made into a movie, let's say. Probably more leaning towards triple X. Most of the stuff that I write is not for children or younger viewers, not because it's particularly scary, but because of some of the elements that are involved in it, a lot of sex, that kind of stuff. The Hillside Altar, I think, touches on that more, but it isn't extremely graphic. It's definitely a little more adult than the Closed Room would be, let's say. And that the idea of these sort of demonic creatures, or whatever you want to call them, some sort of otherworldly creatures or beings that sort of lurk in our universe or in our world, but we don't necessarily know that they're there, and they touch humans in different ways, and they can leave a mark, either whether physical or in some other way, on that person's existence in a lot of these stories that I do. And in a sense, there's a touch of an Arthur Machen story in there as well. Although I was feeling much more Lovecraft at the time, I think I touched on some Arthur Machen when I was doing that one.
I can see that.
And for those who haven't read it, it's a case about a therapist who comes across a young girl who had gone missing when she was very, very small. She's about a teenager when the story happens. And not only can they not explain where she was during any of this time, that she was missing, but everything that she's saying has happened to her since she was missing is completely fantastic and unbelievable. But the doctors who are taking care of her and the therapists and everyone who's trying to help her get back to normal because she's not really quite right after this, um, are noticing strange things about her that just don't make any sense. And finally, at the very end, the therapist who's telling the story discovers he gets a bit of a glimpse into the world that this girl had seen, and it just terrifies him to the point that he can't even really write on what's going on. He just kind of runs away. That's a fairly typical Lovecraft ending, I think.
Yeah.
Just it was too weird. I'm out. So yeah, it's just a simple story like that. It's not that bizarre, but it's a little more typical of the majority of what I write.
Now, is there any place that people can find more about the stuff you write?
Currently, the only things that I have published are things that you've published in your collections.
Okay.
And if it hadn't been for your collections, I'd still be sitting around going, "Oh, well, I'll do it someday." And in fact, I have a book that's been complete for about, I want to say, 12 years or so. That I want to say I'm close to actually publishing it. I'll probably be doing it through Lulu.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed fairly easy to do that, and you know the steps are pretty straightforward. Really, I'm on the final editing phase because I'm sure there's just too much bad grammar and things that if my wife were to actually look at it, she'd be like, no, we got to go back and fix this. So my wife, who is an editor, will actually be editing in her spare time to help me get this going, and hopefully it'll be, I want to say, done this fall or this winter, and it'll be out. But the website, once it does come out, will be just delmerritt.com, spelled like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it right there.
Yeah, it's right there. The website is up. There's just no content just yet because the only thing published are the two books that you've done.
Great. I'll have to check out the website. I haven't seen it. So
Well, there's nothing there. So
there's nothing there at all. Okay, yet. So
yeah, it's just
I will bookmark it though, so I'm ready to see it later.
Okay.
So is there anything else you want to talk about?
Not really. Just it's been a great pleasure being able to get these stories to you and having you publish them. And I think the work that you're doing is great. It certainly makes me happy. And I see all these authors that you're publishing these stories from, and I think a lot of them might feel like me and kind of feel like it can be overwhelming to try to publish things, or that you're in a sea of, right now more people are writing than ever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, more people are writing than breathing, and to try to even think that your stuff might be noticed by any publisher is pretty out there. It seems like just an unreachable idea. So, I would like to thank you, as close to personally as we're going to get for now, anyway, for the opportunity and for helping me out with this stuff. The books are very exciting and they're a lot of fun, and I remember reading Strange Sounds when it first came out, and the first thing I did was I wanted to find out where my interview was, and so I flipped to the back and I looked under B for Brown Jenkins, and I just remember this feeling of elation as I noticed the name of my band right next to Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult. And I was just kind of like, that's it. My life's perfect right there. And then I read my thing real quick, and I was like, boy, I sound like an idiot talking, And then I was like, all right, let's check out the rest of this. I just couldn't put it down. I mean, you have a way that I think somebody had described this in one of the reviews of your books, that you have a way of describing music that makes it sound like you're hearing it, or makes it like you're hearing it. And I totally agree. I mean, your descriptions, you're welcome. I mean, just paying it where it belongs, reading that was very entertaining and informative. And Yeah, it is funny because I remember listening to a lot of those bands and be like, "Wow, he just said what I was thinking." That's pretty cool. So yeah, just I just wanted to thank you for including me in your projects, man.
Well, I'm glad to have your stuff in there. You're always welcome to contribute stuff. I'm very much like your stuff, and um, I'm also glad you're in Strange Sound because that's I try to get everybody put in there, but obviously you literally can't. I mean,
No,
there's just too
no,
much. And in fact, I'm doing the expanded edition now, and since that was published, it's just exploded in terms of Lovecraftian music. It's
yeah,
insane.
and
So
I did see on YouTube a couple years back that some other bands that are playing more traditional style music are doing the same thing with that same Lovecraft song that
oh,
I did.
really?
But they're writing their own melodies for it and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, um, that it's a good idea to do the second edition. I remember when you said you were going to do that because there is so much more. You could probably write a whole new book that would be
Right. And
size.
also there's some things that I can update, like I actually got to talk to Eric Bloom from Blue Oyster Cult when when I did the first edition. I didn't get a chance to talk to him about their songs. I didn't get, there wasn't much for him to say because he didn't really write those songs, but I know now that the influence wasn't actually inside the band, so that'll get added in. So, there are other things that have gotten updated too since then. So it should be cool.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you again for doing this, and thank you for all your contributions. I look forward to more in the future. I like working with you on stuff.
I agree
So,
wholeheartedly. Thank you.
all right. Take care, my friend.
All right, Gary, take it easy.
Have a good day.
You too.
Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.